We have an amazing panel lined up for y'all next. CEA and regenerative field growing. I did practice that word many times, but comes out a little different every now and then. So let me introduce this fine panel. I have Adam Cohen, the Director of Growing Operations for Timberview Farmstead. He's a graduate of Texas A&M University with a BS degree in biology and fisheries. And after a career as a teacher, he fell into the world of aquaponics and urban agriculture. With experience running small urban farms using aquaponics, hydroponics, and even gourmet mushrooms, Adam has found a deep calling to build a thriving, resilient local agriculture system and to teach others how to do the same. I also have Chris Higgins, the president and co-founder of Hort Americas. He is the president there, also owner of urbanagnews.com, a founding partner of the Foundation for the Development of Controlled Environment Agriculture and the International Congress on Controlled Environment Agriculture in Panama. He's a leader in providing technical assistance to businesses, including commercial greenhouse operations, state-of-the-art hydroponic vegetable facilities. And we have Tom Lindholm, the chairman and CEO of U.S. Organic Farms, Inc. U.S. Organic Farms, Inc. is making a substantial investment in Indiana, which he's going to talk about. They've identified 395 acres set to house a cutting-edge 1.3 million square foot of commercial greenhouses. And lastly, we have the co-founder and director of partnerships and collaboration of Restorative Farms, Brad Boa. He is a pioneering urban agriculture initiative based in South Dallas, or it is, and he's deeply committed to the transformative power of locally grown organic food in healing both communities and ecosystems. For over a decade, he's worked to redefine urban agriculture, particularly in underserved neighborhoods. He splits his time between Dallas and his ranch in East Texas, guided by the belief that uniting innovation with justice can truly grow a better Dallas. So it's my privilege to turn over the stage to these fine gentlemen to get this conversation started.
I'm the proud owner of a new puppy as of last Thursday. Telling Tom, my wife thought I had too much time on my hands, and so my mornings are busier than they used to be a week ago. But anyway, but it's a good day. I think God's blessed this day. I was forced to park, I think it was Oklahoma, and walk the whole distance here. So I've got my exercise in. But what really has spurred us coming together for this conversation is the recognition of the food system that we're in. Two of these gentlemen are partnered with us and Whitney Strauss, who is heading the City of Dallas, Dallas County Food Plan Collaborative. And we're talking about a $40 billion food system for Dallas, Fort Worth, and Arlington, with 99.5% of that food coming from outside the state of Texas. And I think we can recognize what's happening to the climate and in the world of agriculture between droughts, tariffs, the workforce, on and on. We're in a very fragile food system. We're trying to build more regional resiliency, and that future needs to be really crafted around regenerative agriculture, which is a big movement. I think somebody said basically the food system we have now is bankrupting our soil, and we're bankrupt, we just don't know it yet. So part of the work is to develop regenerative agriculture to restore the soil, but we also recognize pragmatically we do need controlled environment agriculture. There's been a lot of different views about that, and so we're basically going to discuss how we integrate that and how we can plan for the future of Dallas when it's 120 degrees outside, what will grow or not grow here. I was on the phone this morning with somebody and went to my refrigerator and pointed out to them the food there. I think it was blueberries from Peru, blackberries from Chile, grapes from Peru, tomatoes from Mexico, grown by a company in Canada. It seems there's something wrong with that. And so how do we change that? So we have three men with very different perspectives in different places. So I may ask each of them to kind of describe where they come from in this world of controlled environment agriculture. We might start with Adam, who's running a rather small farm that is in-ground regenerative agriculture, as well as an aquaponics system. So Adam, I'll let you kind of describe what you're doing and what kind of keeps you awake at night, I guess.
Thanks, Brad. So I've been in small scale urban ag for about 10 years. Where I am now, Timberview Farmstead is a 501c3 nonprofit south of Fort Worth. Our primary focus is connecting people back to agriculture. Now, in doing that, we have livestock, we have an aquaponics greenhouse, we have hydroponic systems, we have an acre of soil production. We want to show how agriculture can be done in a way that is both profitable and educational. So my role is specifically to find ways to get that produce that we grow out into the community. My history has been with mushrooms, aquaponics, lettuce, various things, but my focus is what most would probably not even call small scale ag, but more micro scale. So our greenhouse is 10,000 square feet, which compared to what Tom is building is literally micro. But it's the biggest one I've ever worked with. So it's still a lot of fun.
I might pass the microphone to Tom, who has a larger vision. We've had many conversations about the reality, energy costs. Tom is really doing some innovative thinking, and if you will, share that with us, if you would.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Yeah, my name's Tom Lindholm in South Lake, Texas. We formed U.S. Organic Farms back in 2020. Our vision was to leverage the latest generation of technologies, mostly, almost all coming out of Europe, namely the Netherlands. I got involved in hydroponic farms back in 2018 on a small hydroponic greenhouse. Hurricane Harvey hit. It was kind of all hands on deck, and we finished construction. They're in 30 Krogers today, and it really showed me the economics that are really tough with small farms. So my background was really in banking, and I kind of worked it backwards, where I came up where the money, the profitability really started to resonate. Very profitable once we hit 30 to 40 acres in a greenhouse. And it sounds ridiculous, but when you deal with a low margin vegetable like lettuce, it's just hard to make money as a small farm. So we originally started in Gardner, Kansas. We ultimately ended up in Frankfort, Indiana, just slightly north of, about half hour north of Indianapolis. So why did we go there? Found 400 acres, ample water, cheap power. Frankfort is a food processing town, and you know, we say we're a grower, which we'll get into, but really we're a food company. We're a food processor. Now the scale of our greenhouse, and I'm a believer in large scale agriculture, is 12 hectares, which is roughly 1.3 million square feet. Another 200,000 in a pack house. We'll be growing mostly romaine and green leafy lettuce. We've designed 24 SKUs for mainly grocery stores and food service. We will be bringing in some outside produce like kale, arugula, and spinach, and being able to offer everything you see today at H-E-B, Central Markets, Kroger's. And why did I go in this direction? I went in this direction really because the word resilient really hit me too. That my son's in the Navy, and a series of events we had to take care of our grandkids, and every morning I would see our little granddaughter Emmy, and I just thought, are they going to eat the same way we are? And I really doubt that the way it's going right now. So our proposed greenhouse, we're just about to start construction, takes the equivalent of 1,000 open air farms. I mean acres in an open air farm. And what does that mean? It can be reused for something else. So as we replicate this model across the country, it allows the open air farms to adjust their strategy because they can't meet the demand. There's a tremendous amount of product being grown in Mexico, being brought up from the border. Why are they so successful? They're successful because they've adapted high-tech greenhouses. The Netherlands has 10 times more greenhouse acres than we do. Mexico's probably in the same. So America is really behind as far as building high-tech greenhouses. And it's my goal to change that and show that it can be profitable and we can replicate it around the country.
I'll let you pass the mic to Chris. Chris has. A little background, Chris. I think you and I met 7 or 8 years ago at North Carolina State.
Yeah.
Is that right? A conference that Chris had put together around controlled environment agriculture, probably titled Plant Factory, something like that would be
Yeah,
correct?
that one was in conjunction with Chiba University out of Japan.
Right.
Yeah.
But I always say Chris has been very helpful to Restorative Farms effort. Has been very open and sharing with his network and his knowledge. There's a world of academia, and there's a commercial world. No one bridges those two worlds better than Chris, I think, and so he's an amazing resource. So I'd love to let you share your views.
Yeah, so my name's Chris Higgins, co-founder of Hort Americas. I've been in commercial horticulture for 30 years. Hort Americas came about in 2008, so we started at the peak of the recession. I figured what better time to start a business than when everybody's going out of business. And it actually worked out pretty well for us. We ended up partnering with a 135-year-old Dutch grower cooperative. And the way we got our start was we would consolidate the resources that the Dutch would use and then would import them over here to the US and then make them available to American farmers. A lot of that has changed over the years. The Dutch industry has significantly changed over the years. We rely less on Europe now than we did 16 years ago. So right now what Hort Americas is we're kind of like a specialized technical marketing company. We buy products from manufacturers around the world, and then we resell those products to both field farmers and greenhouse growers in the United States. The majority of what our clients are greenhouse growers that grow anything from ornamental plants like orchids all the way through to tomatoes. And then in today's world, that also includes other crops like cannabis and bedding plants and you name it, tissue culture facilities, we provide products to them. I do have offices in Canada. Both Brad and Tom mentioned Canada and Mexico is a major part of this industry. So I have an office in Quebec. I have representation in Southern Ontario. I have an office in Mexico, and then my main office is here in Bedford, Texas.
Very good, thank you. I guess one of the questions Tom had brought up was, and we had early discussions, was how can controlled environment agriculture and regenerative complement each other economically, ecologically, and logistically? I think, Tom, you're doing some unique things or plan to do unique things around closing that loop. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the idea. And I don't really see a competition between California, Yuma, which is a huge agriculture success, regenerative. I think it all kind of plays together, much like in energy. We need solar, wind, oil and gas. So when we looked at the scale that we're building, it was just very important. We've got to use the very best technologies. That's seeds, organic fertilizers. And what came out of it was we generate about 7 million pounds of waste every year. It's staggering. Well, that waste is really packed with fertilizer, organic fertilizer, and medium that could be used by other farmers. It's a great addition to them. Also, we can also advise on seeds. We're talking to seed companies all over the world, and we can provide seeds, fertilizers, nutrients. So I really see it as a cooperative effort so that as we kind of build our business, it takes the stress off the open air farms, and at the same time we're helping. And I would extend that to the urban farms even here. We do want to help Dallas and Fort Worth. We've offered seeds and fertilizers and some other equipment. So I really see it as kind of a win-win for both.
Yep.
Could I
Adam, you and
add
have
something to
talked
that?
about- Oh, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so this was an interesting conversation we had in terms of preparing for what what the relationship was between regenerative agriculture and CEA. Because outwardly, there's probably not a lot of relationships. The reality is that there's a lot of different ways to produce food. Whether we're using a greenhouse or we're producing it traditionally, we all have different tools we use based on where we're located at, right? The idea for most of farmers is to do as much as they can with as little as they have to buy, right? And that's really a lot behind the regenerative agriculture movement, is how can we do a lot with a little? How can we restore the land? How can we make the soil healthy again? Thereby leaving something to the next generation. That's a lot of the regenerative farmers that I work closely with, it's all about what can they leave to the next generation. And they're really talking about their biggest asset, which is their land. You combine that with what we're doing in the greenhouse, we choose that tool because climate is an issue. Not every piece of land is suitable for growing crops. By show of hands, how many people are from Dallas? Most everybody from Dallas? How many people have dug a hole in their yard in Dallas? How many people hate doing that? So that land, you can make a really good argument that that land isn't very suitable for agriculture. And in that case, that's when a technology or a tool like controlled environment ag comes, where you don't have to use the land. So if you have a market, a consumer market, whether that be food service, retail, restaurant, you name it, and you want to grow in that area, you're going to have to choose a tool that allows you to avoid digging in bad soil or manipulating the climate because you want to go year round. Same question for those of us who live in Dallas. How easy is it to keep plants alive in the middle of August? It's really, really challenging. So if you want to grow 12 months a year, you want to provide locally, then you have to invest in tools that allow you to amend the climate or amend the soil, or use the type of labor or water you have access to. And that's where we're choosing different tools. And so from that standpoint, regenerative agriculture, traditional agriculture, and greenhouse controlled environment agriculture, they're all complementary. Where there's a lot more overlap is the resources provided to those farms. Tom mentioned seeds. If you look at breeding, not GMO, but traditional seed breeding, a breeder is going to have to identify what it is they're breeding for. So a greenhouse, someone who breeds seeds for a greenhouse is likely going to be the same company that breeds seeds for the field. And you start to see the overlaps because a lot of those breeders will use greenhouses to speed up their breeding program. And that's where you start to see a lot of the overlap.
Very good. Now, Adam, we talked about regenerative agriculture. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that term or what it means, but I know Adam does, and I think could share that with us.
So with what we do at Timberview with our regenerative soil production is every crop cycle, every season that we grow, we are trying to increase the quality of the soil, whether that's the level of biotic diversity in the soil, whether it's the level of carbon content within the soil for water capture and retention. We're always trying to make it better. And so the focus of what we're looking at, we have 1 acre, so we're not a large regenerative facility, but the purpose that we're trying to teach with this is how to take techniques that are replicable both on small scale and large scale and increase the quality, as Chris was saying, of our asset, of the land. The more diverse the land is, the better the water retention and such, the less is needed to be bought as inputs, the less fertilizer, the less compost, the less pesticide, the less weed suppression plastic. I mean, the list goes on and on. So the better the soil, the better the yields and the better the crops, with less effort, less inputs on the farmer's side. Thereby profits go up, because if for no other reason, then there are less expenses going out. So
Can you speak to, I guess, what has become known as traditional agriculture in Big Ag, and what that really is?
So traditional ag is, as we all know, it's stripping everything out for the end product. So it's become dependent on fertilizers, pesticides. It doesn't have to be that way. There are other methodologies and other methods that can get the same yields and or better yields, and a shift of that type is at least what we're hoping to see in the local area.
Can you speak to the 4 principles of regenerative agriculture?
I just wanted to ask a question. Do we have any traditional farmers in the audience? Yeah? I mean, that's something that I always feel bad for traditional farmers when we say this. Some of my closest friends are large farmers. They would be deemed as traditional. A farmer who has land that they're holding for multiple generations is not trying to destroy that asset. So traditional farming in itself we gotta be careful not to overlap terms that don't really apply. So traditional farmers are going to steward their land, because if they don't, they won't have land to farm. Now, their stewardship processes that they use are gonna vary, right? Do they use cover crop, right? That would be part of the regenerative ag program, is we're gonna use cover crops. We're gonna use these things to restore the land. How they manage those things varies differently. You probably don't have a lot of, the goal would be, the goal would be not to be applying fertilizers in the fall, right? The goal would be to have a cover crop that you're gonna till back in. But I always get a little concerned when we use the term, when we're trying to discredit what traditional farming has done, because it's put everybody in this room in a position where we really don't have to worry about food, right? There's people in the city that have to worry about food, but this room, I don't see anybody who worries about going to a grocery store and getting exactly what they want. And that is because of traditional farming.
That's a good point, and that wasn't my intention in saying what I did. It was where I see conventional ag, the problem with it more than anything else is the system as a whole has required yields at a certain level, and prices have been artificially dropped to a point where those yields are only sustainable with certain processes, which, while the farmers are wanting to steward their land, they're caught between the rock and the hard place of they can't maintain their land, they can't meet their debts if they don't keep the yields. And so they're forced to make impossible choices of, do I do this that maintains the status quo, or do I try to do something different that is going to potentially jeopardize my family's lands? So the conventional food system exists for a reason, and me personally, at the farm that I'm with now, our goal is to try to show other alternatives for ways to switch from that. But no, you're absolutely right. Nobody wants to destroy their assets or to destroy anything. Everybody wants to sustain it as best as possible.
And that's been the challenge with regenerative agriculture. On the restorative farm, I saw it on the LinkedIn page. Mm-hmm. There's an interview, a CBS News posting with an interview of a professor from Texas A&M, I believe, right?
SMU.
Yeah, SMU. In that interview, they come out and say that in the first 2 to 5 years of going regenerative, yields are down, right? That we know to be a fact. So the question is then, how do we share the right sort of information? How do we provide the right sort of opportunities, which would come from legislation and programs to support those first 2 to 5 years? Right. Those programs aren't in place. So it puts the traditional farmer in an interesting place. Just like for Tom and I working in a greenhouse, there is no government subsidies for fresh produce. That's a misnomer. Like, if you're growing fresh produce, there is not a government subsidy for you. In fact, it's the opposite. If you're growing in Florida and you get hit with a hurricane, there is no insurance for you. So you're taking that risk 100% on yourself. And so those are things that it's always difficult when I'm in events like this, because agriculture is such a big word. Right? It's everything from ranching to fresh produce to everything in between. And the governmental programs, the legislation in place, we talk about like soft fruit production in California, they're actually being legislated into coming out of the soil, right? Because there's big fines if you put too much nitrogen back into the waterways. So regenerative ag for blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, and strawberries in California is becoming very difficult to do based on legislation.
And well, therein lies, in your statement, a number of issues. Definitions. There's a lot of arguments around organic, regenerative agriculture. I think the jury's in on regenerative agriculture. It's generally good and can be as productive as what we might consider traditional. But you're saying to a farmer who's been doing something for 30 years, try this new method. And it might take 2 or 3 years to make the transition, but go ahead and literally bet the farm on it. People are very hesitant to do that without some help on doing that, I guess. So there's a lot of arguments about, I think there's 5 principles that are generally accepted around regenerative agriculture: minimum tilling, cover crops, cross planting, rotational, and the 5th component is often grazing, that animals give back into the soil. A lot of the data is still missing on that, and it's coming in, but it's in transition. The future will be some part of that, and within that, we will have a need to control the environment. And so one of the issues about controlled environment agriculture is the cost. I know, Chris, you have a lot of experience about that, right? Can you speak to that?
Yeah,
issue?
well, Tom currently has more experience than
Yeah, I
I do
know,
because he's in the middle of
exactly.
contract
Well,
negotiations.
he's the guy signing the bills, right?
Yeah, it depends on the crop that you're going to grow, but on average, if you try to compare it to field farming, it can be 10 to 100 times more expensive per acre on initial capital startup. I know that if you're doing strawberry, and again, I like using strawberries because it's something we all enjoy, most of us enjoy eating. But if you're doing on acre by acre basis in California, field growers are going to spend about $10,000 a year prepping their land and getting it ready for that next season. A greenhouse grower with a high-tech facility is going to spend between $2 and $4 million one time. And so that's where it comes down to. Are you going to do the same thing every year, or are you going to make a big investment in a greenhouse that's going to last you about 20 years? And that's about the life of a commercial greenhouse.
Yeah, my experience was that if you look at the state of California economics for lettuce growers, they're growing 2-3 billion pounds of lettuce a year, but they're only getting 50 to 75 cents a pound. They don't really make the money. Where the money comes in, and really the education that I learned, is it comes down to the packaging and being a branded product that you probably, when you go into the local grocery stores here, you're probably not buying a head of lettuce anymore. Some people do in the organic section, but usually it's a salad processed either in a bag, and now 100% of the lettuce growth last year was in salad kits. That's where the market is going right now. So if we spent all this money, like Chris is saying, which is true, and we just wanted to be a grower, we'd fail. It is not economically feasible to do. And one of the marvelous things about Dallas is there's a little advertising agent called DMA. It's an all-woman advertising firm, and they do nothing but fresh produce. And I said, I can't make this up. This is fantastic. But we'll probably spend millions on marketing and promotions and trying to build that brand, because you can't make it work. So if you're a regenerative farm, and let's say you got 1,000 acres here in Dallas, let's say they figure that out, you're not going to make money just as a grower. It's just extremely difficult to do. So I think in the future, where I'm going, what I plan to do is actually offer packaging and branding services to small urban farms. For them to have to go to farmers market and maybe not sell everything they have, to me, just makes no sense. So I do feel that we can kind of leverage each other's strengths to make it better. And I love Brad's vision, and I plan to help any way I can. Right, but we got to get the economics right. We got to be competitive, and the grocery stores have got to support us, where they're not going to buy everything they get from California. So, yeah, the economics is tough.
And it all comes down to money, to educate consumers, to get people to pay more. I think we as a country pay less per household for our food than any other country in the world, because most of our food highly processed, is subsidized by the federal government for corn, soy, wheat, which goes into processed food. Of course, we transferred all those savings to something like a $4.3 trillion sick care industry we have, where 60% of us have chronic disease based on what we eat. Something like 40% have too. How do you transition that? It's a big thing to change. And I think, as Adam pointed out, you start somewhere and you chip away at it. But how do we look to the future to start integrating some of these innovative programs together? How do we finance that? How do we make it perhaps a pillar of the Dallas city and county food plan to start creating local growers in some fashion or form? Any ideas on that?
One of the things that our focus is finding and identifying the existing production within the Dallas area. So one of the things that my farm does, like I said at the beginning, my role is to get the food out into the community. So I am in the early stages of building a small food hub on the southwest corner of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. I'm currently aggregating product from 4 other farms, and that goes into our distribution chain out into the community, both retail and wholesale. One way that we can do this, there will always be a place for large farms, for the large scale production that is needed for the food system as a whole. But for a local food system, I believe that one of the best ways to start is to start aggregating the small scale local production, the micro scale production, if you will, and finding ways to get that into the community that don't involve farmers markets. As a farmer that worked farmers markets for multiple years, it is absolutely backbreaking to spend 60 hours a week growing everything and then spend another 20 hours a week, give or take, doing farmers markets. It's not a sustainable way to produce an income, especially for small farms that are 1 to 2 employees, generally the owners. But finding a way to clearly identify, aggregate, and then distribute that food that is already being produced in the urban areas is going to be critical to that, I believe. So,
No, I agree. It's about cost. The message for y'all, you're going to have to pay more for food. That's the bottom line, I think. And you have to understand what you're buying and the value. I bought a ranch in East Texas in 2011 to explore regenerative agriculture and met 5 small farmers out there. Good old boy farmers I wanted to learn from, and I thought I could help them. I also became involved in urban farmers in Dallas. And that was basically the beginning of my thoughts about restorative farms. P.S. Of the 5 urban small farmers I met back then, 3 of them are out of business. Several other urban farmers that were really well run are out of business in Dallas. It just ain't easy. It's not the kumbaya picture that you see on Facebook and social media. It's hard work. Farmers markets are expensive, they're inefficient. We have to find a way to make it a way that someone can actually make a living and not just a nice hobby for themselves. But I know, Chris, you have some thoughts, I see, right? Do I correct?
I always have thoughts. It's whether anybody
Yeah,
cares
I
or
know.
not.
Yeah, but-
You know, I would say the beginning part of your question is how we change that from a consumer standpoint. There are retail stores that are much better to farmers than others, right? So like we're lucky in Texas, HEB is very good to local farmers. So the more you can spend dollars to retailers who care about where the product comes from. Me personally, talking to a lot of my farming friends, small to large, those that have enough volume to sell to retail, locally the options would be HEB, then Costco. Costco is very good to the farmer. So, and then finding out more about what you're buying. Again, this is more philosophical than it is based on my experiences. But if you want to improve the health going forward, spend more time on the outside of the grocery store rather than the inside of the grocery store. And if you're spending more time on the outside of the grocery store, you're buying product before it's processed or packaged, and more of those dollars are going to the farmer, right? So if you're in the dairy section, if you're in the meat section, if you're in the fresh produce section, then it's more likely that more of that money's going back to the farm versus in the center where it's all with the packaging companies. And that would be, create change with your dollar is about the best impact that we can do today. And then try to find ways where that funnels to the farm, regardless of the size.
Right, I agree. We have I guess, small amount of time for Q&A. What questions do you guys have?
Brad, you made a great question about addressing the diet-related chronic disease epidemic our country faces today. I'm curious to hear the panel's perspective of produce prescriptions, of integration of food into the healthcare system. What sort of risk and gaps do you see that's preventing that from broader adoption today to reverse this disease trend we have?
That comes down to money also. We, Restorative Farms, have done projects with the Texas A&M's Institute for Advancing Health through Agriculture. I had to think about that. There's not enough data. There's not enough data to bring to insurance companies or employers to say, help subsidize this diet for your employee or your client, and you'll lower your costs. So we did one project with them. I think 100 families were provided a CSA basket for 15 weeks. And all the typical health metrics, week 1, week 2, week 3. And as you would assume, blood pressure drops, blood sugar counts drop. But providing the food is just part of the issue. Every bit of research I've seen with programs where basically whole foods level organic food is given to a community, at the end of a year it's changed about 20% of the actual habits. So behavior modification is a big challenge.
It's generational.
Yeah, it's very generational,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's a lot to it.
Nationwide Insurance has been investing with Ohio State University, specifically in controlled environment agriculture. That started about 2 years ago. That's one insurance provider that I know sees this as something further down the road. Getting to that point is really challenging. Diets are a difficult one, right? Because a lot of what we do up here, we're not producing a lot of protein or calories. And a lot of people that need to have their diets changed are relying on easy and convenient proteins and calories because of their life and because of the cost of those, because of the budget associated with those easy proteins and calories. And so I think that's one thing that I spend a lot of time looking. I don't have much qualifications to give me, to support why I should have a big opinion on it. But that really what it comes down to is how can we get those proteins and calories in the hands of the people that need it from a convenience standpoint versus, if you shop at Whole Foods or if you shop on the outside of the grocery store, like I was mentioning, you do have a tendency to have less obesity. You do have a tendency to those things, but you also need the time and the budget to be able to shop out there because it's more expensive, right? And it's got a shorter shelf life, right? They're not as shelf stable as what the center of the store is. So really complex conversation that will involve a lot of agencies and a lot of money to continue to explore for the next coming generations.
And if you have all those things, the time to actually process that food. My refrigerator is full of organic food. My wife says, let's order in, because cooking is a chore. And we have the luxury of time to do that. Many people who really need it do not have that luxury. But
Yeah, I would just add to that a couple things. One is hospitals around the country are installing greenhouses because they see the benefits of eating healthy. The other point I wanted to make is I attended a kind of an open session for residents of South Oak Cliff. There was a Save-On that was planning to reopen, and they said, Tom, come down. And I just wanted to listen what the residents wanted in a grocery store. And immediately they said, Tom, come up to the front. And I got lectured for a half hour by grandmas and single mothers in South Oak Cliff that they want organic food. They were very upset that in a food desert like South Dallas, they couldn't get organic foods. And they said, we need it for our kids. So I think you're getting a population that starts to understand that food makes a difference. And I was just pleasantly surprised. The third thing I wanted to add to this conversation is I went down to one of the urban farms, South Dallas, and they had these food trucks, basically, and they said our number one problem is our single mothers don't know how to cook anymore. They don't know how to do collard greens and other foods. So I think there's an education problem too, that a lot of the younger generations grew up on fast food and processed food, and this group spent an enormous amount of time just the education. Here's how you cook collard greens, because it's cheap, it's affordable, it's nutritious, but they don't know how to cook it. So I think the intent is there. I think there's an education part of it, and we just have to all support that.
It's a challenge. I'm out of time. So hopefully we shared some good information. We had some self-interest to be here because you all have some ideas and thoughts. We'd love to hear them. Want to extend a invitation to visit Restorative Farms, Hatcher Station Farm, probably 3 or 4 miles from here. So reach out to me if you'd like to do that. We'd love to set that up. So thank you for your time.